The president is expected to be at his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey this weekend. The trip comes as the White House is working overtime to fill Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy's seat. CBS News Washington correspondent Paula Reid is at the White House and joins us now. Paula, Supreme Court Justice Kennedy announced his retirement only 2 days ago, but the president has already hit the ground running with finding a replacement. How exactly will the White House go about selecting a nominee, and is there any specific timeline in place?
Well, Tanya, this is just about the biggest thing that can happen for a president. Once the president makes his selection, if he chooses a conservative who sort of holds to those principles throughout their time on the bench, he could technically solidify his legacy and tilt the court in a conservative direction for a generation. So as you might imagine, this is, of course, top of mind for the White House right now. The president released a list of people he would consider for Supreme Court positions during the campaign. Now, some names have been added to that since then, and he even actually asked Justice Kennedy for his advice, for his input on who he thought would make a good replacement. Now, it is expected that they will whittle this list down to some finalists. The president and other top officials will interview those folks, and then they will have to make their decision. In terms of a timeline, some folks have thrown out late next week, but it appears right now that it's sort of an arbitrary deadline. And what they really have to do is make sure that they have sufficiently vetted this candidate, not only the individual as a person, their finances, and if they've been spending a lot of time on the bench, they have to look at every single one of their decisions and look for anything that could come up during that confirmation hearing.
Yeah, that's a lot of work. That's got to take some time. Can't do that overnight. Paula, yesterday the president met with key Republican and Democratic senators to discuss the vacancy. How will the White House get those Democrats on board, or does it not need to worry about the Democrats?
Well, clearly this is a priority for the president. Last night he had several members of his own party, but also Democrats, to meet and talk about this process. He's also working the phones, calling a lot of senators. As you mentioned, I mean, there are Republicans that he is a little bit worried about, specifically a Republican senator like Susan Collins. I mean, he's going to have to convince her that whoever he puts up for this job is not determined to overturn Roe v. Wade or Planned Parenthood versus Casey, the abortion laws. Then when it comes to Democrats, he's probably looking for some common ground, some issues, perhaps not abortion, but some other issues where they have common interests and common ground, and he can find someone with a history and a track record that suggests that they may both be happy with this nominee.
So, Paula, switching topics now, there are multiple reports that President Trump has said he wants to withdraw from the World Trade Organization. And earlier this morning, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin denied that. So how could this tension, though, impact the upcoming NATO summit?
Well, it'll certainly make it more interesting. Several NATO allies, they are concerned that the president may just approach this as transactional, that he really is not fully committed to this. In terms of the World Trade Organization, though, the president has called it, quote, a disaster. He said that on the record. He said he either wants to renegotiate or pull out. But as you noted, the Treasury Secretary tried to tamp this down today. He said, look, I'll reiterate what the president has said before, which is we have some concerns about the WTO. We think it's unfair. We think specifically China uses it for its own advantage. And we do have some concerns. He tried to tamp that down. He also said that this administration is focused on fair trade. But, Tanya, we know that doesn't necessarily jive with our reporting. We look at the tariffs the administration has put up, retaliatory tariffs, and what that's done to some U.S. businesses. It does appear, I mean, even members of the president's own party have said that he's not really working as hard as he could to open new markets. Instead, they're sort of raising barriers. So in some cases, when it comes to trade, they sort of say one thing and do another, and it remains to be seen what they do on the WTO.
Absolutely. All right, Paula, meanwhile, there are renewed reports that Chief of Staff John Kelly may be leaving his position soon. What do we know about that?
Well, we know we've certainly heard this before. It's a very stressful place for anyone to work. Most people in any administration don't last too long. We have seen reports from both the press secretaries for both men have denied these particular reports. But we know that immigration, particularly the zero tolerance policy, that was a priority for the chief of staff. That is something that he has been pushing. While the attorney general gets a lot of credit for that, the chief of staff is in lockstep with Attorney General Sessions on that. And we know that particular policy that caused a lot of political turmoil, a lot of political fallout here at the White House, causing additional tension between the president and his chief of staff. But as of right now, they're saying, both of them are saying through spokespeople that this is not true. But you know what, Tanya? It's Friday in Washington, and you never know what's going to happen.
Absolutely. Don't make any plans yet. Paula Reid at the White House. Thank you.